Hello, everybody, and welcome to Panel to Panel. My name is Brian Heater. I'm the host of the interview podcast ROIL, and I'm joined by Heidi McDonald of The Beat and Anthony Ha of ENIAC Ventures. Wanted to get some of the boring process stuff out of the way up top. We will be recording and posting the audio from this session for posterity on the ROIL YouTube page, so you can listen to anything you missed. You can also check out past conversations with Lord Weinstein, Glenn Head, our conversation about indie publishing with Tom Kay and Patrick Crotty, as well as a very spirited conversation with Brian Hibbs and Brandon Schatz about comics retail. This is our fourth time using Twitter Spaces, so hopefully we've worked out most of the major kinks. Like last time, we're going to kick off the talk with our guests, and then at the end, we'll invite some of the listeners to come up and join in on the conversation. All right, I am extremely excited about today's conversation. It's something that we've been talking about for a long time now. Tom Tomorrow is the creator of the weekly strip This Modern World, which appears in a number of national all-weeklies, as well as the Daily Kos, the Nib, and the Nation. The strip has appeared in 13 collections, including Life in the Stupid Verse, which was published by IDW in 2020. He received the Robert F. Kennedy Award for Excellence in Journalism in 1998. And in 2003, he was a finalist for a Pulitzer, and in 2003, and he was also a finalist for Pulitzer in 2015. Ruben Bolling is the creator of the weekly strip Tom the Dancing Bug, which he has published since 1990. His strip appears on Boing Boing, the Daily Kos, and a number of alt weeklies. His collection, Tom the Dancing Bug, Eat the Poor, is due out on Clover Press this May. He received the Robert F. Kennedy Award for Excellence in Journalism in 2018 and was a finalist for the Pulitzer in 2019 and 2021. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us, and I feel like that's probably a pretty good place to start there with all the talk of awards and nominations. So, obviously, as I mentioned, Ruben was nominated for the award last year, along with Lalo Alcaraz and Marty Tubal Sr., but ultimately no award was given for editorial cartooning. Ruben, what's your sense of what happened there? I know there was quite a bit of backlash in the following that announcement.
Yeah, that was a really strange situation because they named the three finalists that the Pulitzer, jury came up with to present to the Pulitzer board. And then the board just sort of punted and said, we're awarding no Pulitzer Prize this year in editorial cartooning at all. And there's no explanation for that. So people can draw whatever conclusions they want from it. It seems to me, I saw it, I've said this, I see it as an insult to cartooning because I feel as though they said there was nothing worthy of a Pulitzer Prize this year. And, forget about my comic. I think this was an incredible year for cartooning with such important things happening. And, Lalo and Marty's stuff is just fantastic. And these you sit on these juries for awards and you have a job to do to hand out an award. It's a simple job. I've done it, but somehow they weren't able to do it. So I don't know. The other explanation is that they couldn't come to an agreement among the judges, that they were stalemated, like they were 12 angry jurors with banging on the table, and they were deadlocked. But I don't know. It seems hard to believe. And again, that's just an abdication of their job. Just someone say, all right, this person gets it, and we'll move on.
Yeah, I think so. We're talking about the award would have been for 2020. Is that right, Ruben?
The award would have been for comics published in the year 2020, right?
2020. So we're talking about the year of the pandemic and Donald Trump and just everything that happened in 2020, and the board just decided that no one did work worthy of the Pulitzer. And yeah, so you have to understand the process. You have a jury that spends a couple of days. I was on a Pulitzer jury a couple of years back. People take it seriously, and you choose out three finalists and you present them to the board, and then the board chooses the winner, or and this is the thing, they can just pick somebody else out of the hat. The Pulitzers did that in what I think was a very dodgy move the year before. So this has been a bad couple of years for editorial cartooning with the Pulitzers to begin with. And I notice, I'm not sure if this is a new thing this year, but I noticed there is no longer an award for editorial cartooning. It is now, it is now graphic commentary and reporting. Now imagine if they mush together text commentary and reporting into one great big category. But that is what they have done. So basically, I still toss in an entry. But after last year, it was pretty clear that they just are simply never going to give it to anyone not doing the traditional editorial cartoon anymore. I mean, what I think of, it's a bigger thing, but what I think of as all weekly cartooning is just locked out. It's just not going to.
That's something that we didn't mention, is that the three finalists, myself and Lalo and Marty, are not traditional editorial cartoonists in the mold of like a Herblock, or like the old guy on staff at a daily newspaper, with his own office, drawing pictures of donkeys and elephants. So we're sort of in a different world. And that's sort of the direction that editorial cartooning, or just whatever you want to call it, illustrated commentary, has gone in newspapers and online and all in every form. So there's this sense that they feel as though this is not really editorial cartooning, and that's why they didn't give it to anybody last year, and why they changed the title of the award this year to illustrated graphic and illustrated commentary and reporting. And I guess it wouldn't surprise me at all if they found some illustrated reporting that was done for a newspaper or something like that they'll give it to this year to avoid that controversy and to take advantage of this new expansion of the category.
It seems to me that, obviously there has been a huge rise in kind of graphic storytelling, but, it does seem kind of unfair. And like, as something new comes up, it gets squished in with this existing category instead of, hey, let's recognize something new.
Yeah, I feel like it should be a separate category.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you guys have both been at this for, veterans.
Thousands
of years.
Well, combine thousands.
Combine.
Half a thousand each.
And through so many different economic models for what you do. And obviously winning a prize is very important for that. But I feel like you guys were both jumping into the crowdfunding pool like way before it was fashionable. And, with charging for your, true fans, I guess. Can you talk a little bit about how you got into kind of reader-supported models?
Yeah. I this is Ruben. We were going through this time in the, I guess in the late aughts and early teens when I was just hemorrhaging newspaper clients. I had built up this whole, like you say, Heidi, this economic model, this model of how you make money in sort of newspaper or serial cartooning. And I built up this business where I had all these newspaper clients, and then they were just canceling comics left and right. And I was in really bad shape. But the weird thing was that I was probably more exposed. My comics were seen by more people than ever because of the web. So the web was both, killing my comic because it was competing with these newspapers, but it was also giving me all this exposure, but, it didn't pay as well. So, yeah, I had to figure out a way to save the comic strip. I just had to do something. So I decided on doing this sort of crowdfunding or a subscription model where I send out the comic a day early to people who want to subscribe to it with other content. And just instantly, it became my biggest single source of revenue. I think the day I announced it, and it's only grown since then. And so that's become the thing. And then right after, I talked to, Dan and I are always in touch and talking about what we're doing. And, I cobbled together this way of getting subscription payments in and not having to manage, each individual subscription.
It was a totally jury-rigged thing because there wasn't, and for the system we use, and I followed Ruben's lead and stole his idea, basically.
I gave him the turnkey. I said, here's how I did it. Yeah.
I had been thinking about doing it for a while, but he actually figured out the nuts and bolts. But, we cobbled this thing together, and we're still both running on this very jury-rigged, cobbled-together system because the company we use to send out the newsletters, I think, still does not have integrated payment as part of its business model, which is kind of crazy at this point.
I think that's changed.
Have they adopted that?
Well, I'm joking because of all the news about Substack today, but
I didn't see the news.
I have not seen that news.
But there certainly is now. It's much easier now. And anyone can do this in like 30 seconds now. Yeah,
there's other platforms now.
Right. Now there's Patreon and Substack, and I offer it on those two as well, as well as the old way that we did on MailChimp and Campaign Z that Tom and I did. But
I'm just afraid that if I try to move everybody over to a different platform at this point, I will lose half my subscribers. So there's a definite sunk cost to it.
Yeah, well, we could talk. I just offer it on different platforms. You say however someone wants to join me in the Inner Hive, I'm happy to have them. So I just have lots of different ways of doing it. And it's a bit more work, but yeah, it's become much more accepted in not only in cartooning, but across all art forms. That
Oh my God! Do you remember that guy who was hassling both of us when we started up about how it was a terrible business model and what we had to do was have a free newsletter and then sell T-shirts and art prints and stuff?
Oh, I never heard from that guy.
Oh my gosh, he was really, really convinced because he was referencing another cartoonist who used that model and how successful they were, and I was like, no, I really think this is going to work, and it actually did, and now it's everywhere.
Yeah, it's really great. When I started it, I was sort of dreading having to write the Inner Hive mailings and to have this sort of to manage this direct relationship with readers. But it honestly has been so much fun. And I love the interaction with readers. It's that, you send it out and you get, and not a lot because people are respectful, but you get this reaction from people and I get to know them. And it's just really, it's been much more of a joyful and positive experience than sort of I thought when I sort of reluctantly figured, all right, this is the only way it's going to work.
I would second all of that. And for me, it has the added benefit. Ruben goes through a syndicate, so he has someone spell checking him. I don't. And so sending out my newsletter a day in advance, if there's a typo, and there's almost always a typo, I have an early warning system for that.
Yes, I just sent out the Inner Hive mailing right before we came on, and I got a correction on a comma from a reader, even after. so yeah, as well as wonderful responses, which is fun because the hardest time, the time I feel worst about a comic is right before I send it out. I always feel, oh no, this one's going to ruin me. They're going to hate this one, and then to get that response back is like a very instant reassurance.
That's so weird. I don't think any other cartoonist feels that
way. Yeah, every week.
Tom, you bring up an interesting point with the syndicate, and this is something I've long been curious about. Obviously, as I mentioned at the top, in addition to all of the alt weeklies and papers the two of you have worked with over the years, you both publish on places like the Daily Kos and The Nation. When that initially started and when you initially really started publishing online, was there pushback from the syndicate or the weeklies?
Do you want to take that one?
Well, just from the syndicate's perspective, I mean, they were dealing with the same thing I was. They were like, what do we do about this? And they said, we got to have our own website, which they eventually did. And it was clear that and their syndicate is still going along, and it's still sending out. I'm with Andrews McMeel, which sends out Garfield and what else still exists?
Dilbert.
they send these out,
and
it's still it's still a business, but it's just so clear that right when this started that geographic exclusivity of newspapers just became meaningless almost overnight. That, once you put it up on the web and, you have a website client, then all those newspapers that used to get exclusivity in Miami, and the only way to read it was to pick up the Miami Herald and all this stuff. And that just went out the window. And yet the syndicate and I and Tom and everyone knew that you had to be on the web, that in spite of that, you had to adapt to it and figure it out. So, yeah, there was never pushback from the syndicate, and certainly not. Well, my other clients are just web clients, but none of my print clients ever gave me pushback from the web because it just became so clear that was what's going to be the future. Did you get any pushback from print clients about being on the web, Tom?
Yes, but in during, prehistory, during the Clinton administration, but not in modern times at all. No, it's just how the world works now.
Yeah. Well, we were both on Salon.com, which was I think it was the first web magazine. It was really early.
Yeah.
When Salon called me, this is incredible. When Salon called me and said, I'd heard of the internet and I knew the internet. When they called me and said they're going to put their magazine on the World Wide Web, I had to call someone afterwards to ask what the World Wide Web was.
Well, Salon was founded by a bunch of people that I had been working with at the San Francisco Examiner, and so I gave them a bunch of names, and they were going to use me. And I didn't really have a very clear idea of what they were doing, so I went down to the offices, and they had to look up their own URL to figure out where they had their demo site parked. And so I think they pulled up Google, and I said, "Oh, is the name of your site Google?" No, it would have been before Google. It was probably Yahoo. And I said, "Oh, is the name of your new magazine Yahoo?" And somebody in the office literally laughed out loud at me.
Well, they're the ones using Yahoo to find their own website.
Yeah, well, they just had it parked somewhere, and it wasn't called Salon.com, and they didn't.
But
they didn't know what it was.
Well, I see. But yeah, it was really early. So I was on the web super early, and I never heard any pushback from any print clients. They just felt as though that was my right to do it, or the syndicate. That it was my right to do it, but you saw the power of it really, really quickly.
And so the business model has obviously evolved dramatically, but as in terms of just thinking about your audience and where most people are encountering your work, whether initially in the all weeklies, then on the web, and now showing up in people's inbox, does the way you think about the creative side of it evolve? Or does it still feel like you're doing the same thing as you were when your primary audience was in the alt weeklies?
I feel like I used to literally put footnotes in the cartoon. I feel like Google exists now, so I don't have to explain everything I do or every reference I make or whatever. I'm not sure if that actually answers the question.
Yeah, I think definitely that's been my experience too, is that I'm more likely to Google something if I don't quite get the reference. But at the same time, it's striking to me also, thinking about, I think both of your comics, that it also does there is this continuity, that this modern world in 2022 also looks a lot like this modern world that I, not to make you feel super old, that I grew up reading.
Yeah, I think you do something a long time and hopefully you get a little bit better at it. I think my writing is a little better than it was then, but I'm not sure. I don't know. I think you just have, this evolving relationship with the audience, and there is something I miss. In the early aughts, when our work was running in the Village Voice, pretty much you would walk into a party and everyone would have seen your cartoon that week. You didn't have this kind of global reach or whatever, but you really had saturation among the people who read all weeklies if you ran any local all weekly. And I left New York for a long time, and I moved back, I guess, 4 years ago, and I could just really tell the difference that, I couldn't assume, honestly, that people had ever heard of my cartoon anymore.
See, but I feel as though my cartoon is read more than when I was in the Village Voice and the Washington Post. I feel
overall, yes, but you don't have that local saturation where
I don't know.
Everyone in a certain demographic is just immediately going to know who you are and what you wrote about this week.
Yeah, I think you were a member of that demographic more than I was. So I always felt as though even when I was in the Village Voice.
What are we saying here?
You hung out. You hung out with the alt weekly crowd, and I'm more of a civilian. I'm more of a. This was like I didn't really hang out with people who read alternative weeklies all the time. Huh. But to go back to that question, I think it does, how the comic is distributed, it does change the way I write, because if I was in, the Village Voice, the Washington Post, I would always be aware that there'd be a lot of people who have never seen my comic strip before. But now, my best paying audience is the inner hive who knows it intimately. And then also, these web clients as well as print clients. But basically, I take a lot more. I feel as though I take it for granted that people know my stuff more, and I can use characters and running jokes, which is a lot of fun, more than I think I would have if I felt I was just in it's just writing for a huge mainstream general audience that's going to be dispersed versus this niche audience, but that one that's very attentive. I think that changes the way I probably subconsciously when I sit down and I think of my reader, that's probably does change the way I write.
Do you feel that a part of that is since you are really writing to a very targeted audience from the standpoint of, again, it's, people that are visiting these sites like the Daily Kos of the Nation or are specifically subscribing to you, that you're able to be pointed in a way that you might not have been able to be when it was just syndicated?
You mean substantively, like a pointed,
politically, thematically.
No, I think I always try to be as much as I can. So I don't think that would change. I try to turn up the notches whenever I can, and that's something that I think Tom and I did. Well, not just Tom and I, the entire alternative Newsweekly cartoonist community did, starting in the 90s, and how we differentiated ourselves from sort of that older style of the the very vetted establishment editorial cartoonist, to use a sort of a cliche, and they're not all like that. But I think we were much more opinionated and pointed. And so that if it wasn't a marketing move on our point, I'm sure Tom would agree, this was something that we just did naturally.
It was kind of the stuff we grew up on, really.
Yeah, right.
And the stuff, it was our influences. And Ruben and I have talked about this, certainly, like Mad Magazine was a big influence for us, and things like Gary Trudeau. I don't know. Who else for you, Ruben?
Well, I guess, Mad Mag. I think TV. I think Saturday Night and
Saturday
Monty Python,
Night.
And
it's
in terms of comedy and writing. Those,
right.
Yeah, definitely. But Mad Magazine. But I think that so it wasn't a marketing decision. It ended up being a good one, because we suddenly found ourselves marketing to these alternative news weeklies that wanted this stuff that was going to be more pointed, more controversial.
And just something different. They just wanted something different. They didn't want the sort of generic editorial cartoon.
Right. And so, that's, I think from our very beginning, I think that was sort of our trademark, was that we we're not going to do, sort of Jay Leno jokes about, Clinton eating at McDonald's. Although now that I say that, I'm sure I've done that. I did that. I think I did a joke about him doing that. But about more substantive things, always trying to be entertaining and funny, but really with a point behind it. And Mad Magazine at its best, which was definitely did that, and so did a lot of sketch comedy and political comedy. To the extent that I wasn't always political, but to the extent that I wanted to be make a point.
It's just a different approach. I mean, this is not in any way to disparage the more traditional style of editorial cartooning, which has, there are some giants in that field. There are some amazing people who do that work. So.
Oh, absolutely. And not only that, they have a really hard job. I mean, if I had to do 3 a week and was given an assignment, all right, now do a job about, Russia building up their troops outside of Ukraine and have it on my desk by 5 p.m. today.
Yeah, I couldn't do that.
I think I would be so much worse than they are. I'd be horrible.
There's no way.
Yeah, I would. So, that's definitely a skill and people love it and it's fantastic. So, yeah, and there's great people who have done it and still do it, but I'm talking in broad strokes about the way that we differentiated ourselves from a lot of the people that were doing it at that time.
Yeah, you guys, I wonder though now. I mean, how things are so outrageous. Like it's almost like nothing is too outrageous to be true. And obviously both you use different kinds of exaggeration in your humor. I mean, do you ever, I don't want to ask, how do you get your ideas?
Well, the Trump, yes.
That's great. It's a great question. That's exactly, you put it, that's right. The hammer on the head of the nail.
Yeah.
If satire is sort of about exaggerating reality to make a point, like the Trump years came real close to killing satire because it was impossible to exaggerate.
Because he was better at it than us. He was.
You could write a thing.
Trump was fantastic. He would do stuff that I was like, wow, that is great satire of him.
He would outdo your cartoon. I can't tell you how many times he would do something in between the time I filed the cartoon and it saw the light of day. He would do something that just was even more ridiculous than what I had written.
It made it really hard. There in a couple ways. One is that I think I had to shift from exaggerating, like someone would do something, and I'm like, all right, I'll exaggerate that. You couldn't exaggerate, as you said, you couldn't exaggerate Trump. So I think what I shifted to do is like just recontextualize it, like show it in a different context as opposed to exaggerating it, because you couldn't do it. The other thing that he changed so much, and Tom, you agree with me on this, he changed the time scale of humor.
He would, we have
weekly comic strips, and usually something big would happen, and you'd have a few days before people would move on to the next topic. And so you could, think about it, draw it, and then publish it. And he changed it in a way that was just mind blowing, because he would do something big and you would try to think of a comic. And then literally like 4 hours later, no one's talking about that. Everyone's talking about this new thing.
Yeah, that's very true.
He changed the game, and that made it really hard on weekly guys. That was tough.
I'm also curious, as you guys work on the strips, to what extent are you thinking about the response that you want to get, in the sense of like, oh, I really hope this is like will like shift the discourse and people will be tweeting about this specific point I want to make, versus I'm just going to get this out into the world and it makes me laugh and I let it go.
Never have any hope of shifting the discourse. That's not a thing that I think about. I just want to hit the deadline and do something good. That's all I'm trying to do.
I just want to be entertaining, and it's impossible to change anything. I'm just, if anything, I'm just writing really to people who agree with me, basically, and providing comfort. If I'm doing anything, it's providing comfort to them. Although I do, sometimes I'll catch myself, like I'll watch see something in the news, and I'll say, hey, I took care of that like a month ago. Didn't they see my comic? I put that to bed.
That whole asteroid movie. I did that cartoon in like 2017. You know?
There's that. Oh yeah, of course. There's the satire. No, but I mean actual news stories. Like people are still talking about that. I eviscerated that like a month ago. But yeah, the asteroid movie. I did.
And to be clear, I'm not saying that they stole my idea. It's an obvious metaphor. But I did that. I did that entire movie in 6 panels. 5 years ago.
I went back and I found an asteroid comic for each of the last 4 administrations. And it was interesting because it actually showed like the issues with each administration, like what I was dealing with, and I didn't do it on purpose. I'm saying
I did a specific global warming parable as an asteroid. Like I'm not kidding that I did that movie.
I think I did too.
Yeah, I think part of the reason I ask is because there has been this whole like discourse with the asteroid movie where they're like, oh, if you don't like the movie, that means you're like not anti-climate change enough, and then the people who made it were saying, or criticizing the makers of the movie because they're like, well, what's the point of making an anti-climate change movie? You're just preaching to the choir. And I think that, as people who, it sounds like you guys also see the value in preaching to the choir, like, hey, like just providing comfort to them or helping them, crystallize their own thoughts.
Well, I think it's a Molly Ivins line, maybe. But if preaching to the choir is a bad thing, why do people go to church on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. If anyone, he's on such a Adam McKay's on such a huge platform that if anyone can change someone's mind, it would be him with all these Hollywood stars. But yeah, he's not going to move the needle on the people who are really entrenched. He's just doing satire. He's doing what we're doing. He's making a comment. That's what artists do. He's talking about it, and just because it's not going to change the direction of the country on climate change doesn't mean it's not great art. And I thought that was a great movie.
Yeah, I thought it was funny. I didn't know it was going to be a political statement. I thought it was funny. Do you guys think that, as observers of the social scene, though, does it just seem sometimes that some of these characters that we have on the national stage are literally trying to be like cartoon characters? Like Kristen Cinema, or, did somebody invent her? She's almost can't be real.
Yeah, I think that there is a tendency, and Trump didn't invent it, but he accelerated it to a great deal to get not necessarily cartoon characters, because cartoon characters don't get that much attention, but to get attention to be as outrageous as possible. So to exaggerate yourself and to
so it's not even Kristen Cinema so much as like Madison Cawthorn or Marjorie Taylor Greene or Lauren Boebert or these people who are just really just out of their minds.
But look how successful they've been. And we know who they are. They're these minor Congress people, but they grab headlines. They know what they're doing, and it's it's horrible. It's a perversion of our political system to abuse the media and social media that way, just for your own political career. But that's definitely what's happening. So, but yeah, and that's part of goes back to what we talked about before about it's hard to exaggerate these characters anymore. Trump was part of it, but he's not the only one. It's these people are really doing our job, satirizing themselves for the sake of getting clicks and eyeballs.
Well, they're doing. If our job entailed making the world a much more terrible place, they have actual influence in the world.
Right. Well, sure, but we would just be doing these things to satirize them. They're doing them to get for actual evil purposes. But yeah.
So we're going to actually open things up in a bit to questions if anybody has any. And also at some point, I would definitely like to get Shannon Wheeler's input on the Trump conversation, because I see he's here as well.
Oh, wow. Hi, Shannon.
I think a lot about, I'm sure both of you are friendly with or friends with Tim Kreider, and he was doing, political cartooning for a while. And I think just had to sort of step away at a certain point. Now, Heidi, Anthony, and myself have all been in the daily news writing game, and it really, I mean, it grounds you down. It's hard enough to just sort of like be in the news cycle, be on Twitter and following along, but to actually sort of like immerse yourself in it the way that you have to do when you're doing these weekly strips.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's really exhausting. And I had a lot of other stuff going on in my life over the past few years, and it's just, it's exhausting, but it's kind of just what I do. It's what I get up in the morning and do, and it's my job. It gives me, like, I had the big life upheaval where I didn't have a lot of stability, and for a while I thought I should just take a hiatus or quit, but it actually provided me routine and stability to keep doing it.
Yeah, I've gone through some things where I did not want to do the comic strip, did not want to forget about political, I don't want to be funny. You go do this for 30 years, things are going to happen. But yeah, it was weird. I told Tom this story, but basically, there was a time when I just did not want to do a comic. As I had gone through a tragedy, and eventually it was time to do the comic, and I did it, and it was totally a fine comic. It was like a B+. It was as though I could just turn it on. I realized it doesn't have to be a fiesta. I can just like sort of go through like the intellectual exercise of thinking of something that I think may be funny and drawing it. And it was a silly comic. It wasn't about politics. Had nothing to do with what happened. And so, yeah, it can be very cathartic. I know after 9/11, I did not want to do a comic. I didn't know how to do a comic. But my God, when I was forced to do it, it was absolutely cathartic. I mean, there is a comic I can think of that I just did. I felt horrible beforehand, and it crystallized these like inchoate thoughts that I could not pin down, and it helped me do it. And I felt much better after having drawn that comic. So it can really help.
So, yeah, I know. I was just going to mention. So, if you have any questions, there should be a little button to request to speak, and then we'll start inviting people up. You can go ahead, Anthony.
Oh, I guess just speaking of things that are sort of beyond parody, I saw, Tom, that you had a tweet from last year where you were talking about, just watching the conversation around NFTs and just feeling like you were. Oh, actually, I don't remember. You said you were going insane, or the rest of the world was going insane, but I definitely had a similar experience of just expecting that to go away, and instead it's like just keeps building. And I'm curious, just have you guys had any moments where you're like, is there something here, or does it just seem like people are going crazier and crazier?
Well, I mean, you have to keep up with the world. You have to keep up with the world and the way it changes. I think there is a tendency. I don't know. I remember when I was a kid reading some editorial cartoonists who felt like they were kind of frozen in their formative moment that was like 30 years before or something. And so like with NFTs, I think I finally referenced them in this week's cartoon. I think it's the first time, but I wanted to make sure I was on solid footing, make sure I wasn't missing something. So I read quite a lot I did my own research. But no, I really tried to get my head around it. But in the end, people are buying fucking blockchain links to JPEGs. It's insane for millions of dollars. It's insane,
Yeah, it's hard to understand it. It makes no sense. I did a satire of it in one of my comics. Must be like a year ago, and actually like offered one for sale as a prank. But it's just, and it hasn't. I never sold it, but I see that someone just said that the thumbnail graphics in the Twitter image for panel to panel made him think that we were about to announce NFTs.
Oh God!
One of my characters is Charlie the Australopithecine. Looks like a bored ape.
I was gonna say 5 words. Too much coffee, man. NFTs. What do you think, Shannon?
I'd buy one.
Christ, no.
I'll start the bidding.
I can't even begin to articulate how much I hate NFTs. I think that's Tom's job.
Shannon, are you on?
Is that Shannon speaking?
I think I'm on.
Shannon, hey, how you doing?
Hey, guys. It's I didn't expect this at all, so I'm gonna run back into my corner. Right?
No, Shannon,
stay and tell us your NFT strategy.
Part of the reason why I wanted to bring you up is because we were talking about obviously the difficulty of lampooning Trump, and that's something that you've been immersed in over the last several years.
Yeah, I think they hit it. It's like every week he would outdo himself. I was thinking of a friend of mine, a homeless friend. He said that it was always the more entertaining person that would win the presidency. And then he said, with the Biden thing, that was kind of the exception to the rule. But I went back thinking about people going back to Nixon and thinking that was true. And entertainment. I mean, they're nihilists and they're optimists and trolling. I think the troll metaphor for a lot of these politicians is really true.
Shannon, did you say that your friend is your homeless friend?
Yeah, he's a cartoonist. I used to cartoon with him. Ace Backwards. He's great. He chose to be homeless, but he's good insight. I don't know. He's a good guy.
Yeah,
but he's my homeless friend. I don't.
Yeah, that was a good insight, and a homeless friend. Good.
And I keep meaning to steal it from him, and I just haven't had the opportunity to put it to paper. But I like it.
And I mean, I guess another thing I was curious about, again, talking about writing for a kind of left-leaning audience. I know that all of you guys, I think, have been comfortable sort of also poking the sort of really headachy things about establishment Democrats as well. But is there a mindset change? Did it feel different when you went from a Trump presidency to a Biden presidency, even if you weren't necessarily happy about everything the administration was doing?
I think I was so obsessed with Trump. I just devoted 4.5 years of my comic strip to him, just about. So there was a little bit of a gap, but I think that what's happened is instead of with Obama, you can look at my old comics. I really did a lot of satirizing of Obama and his administration and criticizing. And I haven't done it with Biden, and I think I don't have the stomach to do it because there's so many other things going on. Why would I criticize him for not being, left enough or not doing this right when there are, the Trumpists are still, marching on and both
I've
civilians and politicians. Yeah,
I've had that same reaction. Like I expected, I would fall back into the Obama era patterns, but I don't know. We're honestly, this country's sliding into fascism. It's just going to take one little push, and we're over the edge. And that sort of thing just feels much more compelling to me than than Biden. A lot of factors, but there's a lot of things that I wish had been done that have not been done. And occasionally I'll do my Parallel Earth series where all of those things obviously happened because, we're in a pandemic. Obviously, we shifted to universal health care and a universal basic income and masks and test kits for everyone because what kind of idiot society would not do that? But, for the most part, it just feels like we're at such an inflection point right now. And I just wonder if we're just in this kind of liminal space between bad and worse, Right.
And that's why, why would I, not that as we said, not that I can affect anything. It's just, why do I just don't have the interest in criticizing him when, at least he's doing something to, and trying to stop this huge thing that's going on. And that's the thing that I want to write about. So I've been writing about, QAnon and the Trumpists and the people in charge and the Republicans in charge and still Trump. So I just kept going on and on.
I mean, I feel like I do write about Democrats not doing enough right now. And then a lot of that tends to focus on Manchin and Sinema. If we, we're not getting voting rights, we're not getting the infrastructure, we're not getting all this stuff that would actually help turn this thing around. Even just canceling student debt would earn you the loyalty of young voters across the board. And there's just so many things. And at a certain point, when you've been shouting into the wind for 30 years, it's kind of like, well, I guess this is just where we're going now.
Right. But the reason it's not happening is clearly from Manchin and to the right. And so you could say that people to the left of that should be doing other things.
Biden could have come out the gate trying to stack the Supreme Court, but instead he had a commission and kind of punted on the issue and then hoped everyone would forget about it. So we're stuck with the Supreme Court for the next 30 years because Biden is not going to stack the court, Yeah.
You have to fight to win, and a lot of people seem to be very good at that. But I wanted to ask you guys, this is a gloomy topic that we could wander on about for a long time. But just to slightly...
But let's not be gloomy. Let's be cheerful.
Well, yeah, well...
Yes, please.
Well, I wanted to ask you about other projects that you do. Because, Ruben, I know you did some kids' books. And Tom, you've dabbled in animation and other media. Tom
did a kids' book too, isn't that right?
I did a young children's book. Ruben did young adult books.
Well, they were for middle grade,
middle grade books
for kids. Yeah, for kids.
Does that help sharpen your cartooning? Is it good to take a break from it and do something else, or how does it affect your work?
It's not like I get a break. I have a weekly deadline, so it just doubles my workload. So I take on additional projects very carefully because it's not like I can just put aside my normal work.
But yeah, I love doing that because it was such a gear shift. Not only away from I've only written for adults. For 30 years and writing for kids and trying that and writing, long narrative, which I hadn't done probably since I was required to do it for a project in high school or something. That was just joyful. And for it to come out like that, I loved it. And I want to do more. So I'm writing something else for the same age group. It's just a total gear shift. I don't think it changes or affects sharpens my other cartooning, but it provides totally different muscles, totally different things, different sense of humor, different style of writing and drawing. So I've loved it. And then just doing my other book projects for Tom the Dancing Bug has been fun too. Drawing the the complete Tom the Dancing Bug series is out with Clover Press. So just right now I finished one cover. I'm doing the cover of Volume 4 this week. That's just great fun stuff.
And Shannon, I know you will try any crazy project, like an opera.
Oh, Christ. I'm pulling me back into this thing.
He wanted to be in the audience.
Yeah, I did an opera. But partly I had a dream that Too Much Coffee Man was singing, and I thought, how can I do this? And an opera friend of mine had been bugging me to do an opera for a couple of years. And then I thought, yeah, this is the weirdest thing because it's weird. It was interesting. It was weird. I don't know. But yeah, making money off opera is harder than comics.
Yeah, but isn't it fun to try something like totally different, something creative that is not what you're used to? I mean, I can think of an idea for a comic and I know exactly how I'm going to lay it out. And I sort of, but when you have to try something new, everything is it's just, fresh powder. It's so much. I found, those opportunities to be so much fun.
Yeah, definitely. And then you look around at everything. You're like a kid again, trying to pull ideas from, the television and the weird channels on TV, or walking down the street and you see something, you're like, oh, I can work this into my opera in some way, or you hear something and like, oh, that kind of fits with this. And yeah, it makes you a kid again in that open to everything way. Yeah, it's great.
So I guess also on the theme of, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I like the kids' books. I mean, I was wondering, like, what got you started on doing kids' books?
Oh man, well, I guess the way that started was I was talking to people in Hollywood about TV shows, and so this was I had basically a failed pitch for a kids TV show, which I really would have also loved to have done, because that would have been another
lawyer one, right? The lawyer for
no, that one was sold at the time, and there was some interest, so I began having meetings. That was my period of going out there and sitting in offices, sipping on a bottle of water and having meetings. And so I would pitch these ideas, and one of them I liked a lot, but apparently the kids networks didn't like enough. So I thought, well, maybe I'll just write it as a kid's book. And so I wrote it, and it was almost instantly accepted by a publisher. And then I had to rewrite it. But I at the time I had younger kids, and I loved those books, and I've always loved making kids laugh. I love having. I was so honored to have kids as readers. That was fantastic. Going to schools. I haven't published a new one in a while, but that was such a really fun project, because kids, when a kid loves your book, they love your book like no one else does. That is a real love, and that's just a fantastic audience.
I wrote a book for younger children because when my son was young, I started thinking about how most bedtime storybooks are apparently written by people who have never tried to get a 3-year-old to go to sleep. And I wanted something that an adult could stand to read over and over again without going insane. And I also wanted something that was the correct length. You want a book that takes you, I don't remember, 5 or 10 minutes, say 10 minutes to read, and then you're out. Get the kids sleep. And so that was really the main, that was the main motivation is, a lot of classic, what you think of as classic children's books were not really written with the idea of just reading a story to a child at bedtime, and they go on much too long, and they're much, I don't know. I wanted to do what I thought would work better for that.
So I have this slightly blurry but vivid memory of reading This Modern World kind of around the time of the WTO protests 20 years ago in Seattle, and I remember these strips were kind of about the sense of optimism, and that the range of what seemed possible had opened up. And obviously the last few years have just been this complete horror show.
That's been entirely stomped out of me.
That was my question.
I've been crushed by reality.
No.
Sorry, what was that?
Oh, have there been moments where you felt that optimism, or is that's all just gone now?
Oh boy. I am less optimistic about the future than I once was. But I hope for the best for all of us. And as a friend of mine says, and I'm always stealing this line, we will all find out together.
I was going to try to bully Durf into coming up, but I will open this up to everyone. I know that he can probably speak to this as well as anyone. Obviously, he had one of his works optioned into a movie a few years ago. But now that with the current landscape, with all the streaming services, has that opened up the opportunity when it comes to working in Hollywood and potentially getting things optioned into a series or a movie?
I had that period when I was doing that, and this would be a much better period because they're desperate for content, but I just have not put in the time to try to dip my toe back in that because I'm working on these other books. And they haven't, barged down my door. So, I could start up the process. There's people I could call to see if there's any interest, but right now I feel as though, I'm happy with these book projects, and I'll see where that takes me. But yeah, I was so interested. I came pretty close with a couple times in getting TV shows on with, 20th Century Fox was not that close, but Adult Swim and Cartoon Network was really close, and never turned the corner. So I feel as though that's like a treadmill I've been on, and I'm just going to stick with publishing unless I get the fire in my belly again, or they come to me.
Yeah, I have a sort of similar, I had a development deal with Saturday Night Live a long time ago. Did a bunch of web animation way before people had the broadband to be watching web animation. I was working with some people a few years back who thought we could pitch a TV series, and then it kind of never went anywhere. And then my life fell apart for a while, and then made it harder to do things like that. And I just haven't really had the interest lately.
Oh my God! You just rocketed me back in time, though. Remember webisodes?
Yeah. I had a whole website, like I think they were. It must have been in Flash animation because it loaded more quickly.
Oh right. Oh, God.
But you still had to wait for it to load. I mean, it was They were good. They were. I'm still proud of those.
Now they're classics. They're cartoon classics.
Yeah, but it was kind of an idea before its time. It was kind of an idea before. It was when people, it's when we all still had dial-up, I think,
How close have we come to having a Too Much Copy Man series?
It's been optioned and gone up the poll twice, I think. Yeah, maybe 2.5 times, I guess. But once it was so terrible that I wanted to kill it, and that my lawyer said that they'd invested enough in it that it was best that I divorce myself emotionally from the project. But I watched it derail. I watched it go from bad to terrible, and it was just, I never understood the older cartoonists that would talk about being relieved when a project died. And then I was like, oh, now I understand. I don't know. Yeah, if it came around again, I'm open, but I'm not chasing it. Maybe we're the old men now. I guess we are.
I think effectively we are.
Bring Durf in. Let's torture him.
Yeah.
He has the most experience.
I'll try to invite him one more time, and we'll see if he wants.
Durf knows better.
It could be a tech thing. He might just not want to talk. Pulling him to come up.
He joined and then walked out of the room.
He's pooping. I'm sure of that.
We should ask Keith Knight next time, and he can talk about what happens when it does work.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely.
And he's done a good job too. So.
And I highly recommend. It was on Amazon for a while. It might still be, but the My Friend Dahmer movie is really fantastic. If you haven't seen it,
that's absolutely.
Came out a few years ago.
No, that's a huge success. Good. Sure.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, on that successful note, thanks everyone so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
See, we managed, in spite of everything, we managed to end on a happy note. Thanks for joining us. If you missed any part of this conversation or would like to hear some of it again, we'll be posting the episode on the RAYL YouTube page at some point over the next couple of days. Thanks again to our guests, Tom Tamara and Ruben Bolling. Tom's work can be found over at thismodernworld.com. Ruben's strips you can find over at gocomics.typepad.com/Tom the Dancing Bug, or I think probably easier just to go to his Twitter account and
TomTheDancingBug.com.
Oh, okay, there we go.
There you go.
Shannon, what's a good website for you?
Oh crap! I don't know. Just Google me. I'm all over that. That's worthless.
Awesome.
And join our subscription list if you want us to keep doing this work, because I know for Ruben and I, it's really the only thing keeping the cartoons sustainable right now.
Yes, please do. Join the fun.
What's the best way to do that?
Mine is my pinned tweet on my Twitter.
On my Twitter, TomTheDancingBug.com has a link right there.
Awesome.
TomTheDancingBug.com.
Great. Well, thanks everyone so much for joining us. This was a lot of fun.